My name is Margaret. I am 71 years old, and I am speaking to you right here from Texas, USA. Before I begin this story, I want to ask you kindly to subscribe, like this video, and click on the notification bell so you will not miss the upcoming chapters of my story. And please tell me in the comments from which part of the country you are watching. Now let us begin. It happened on Christmas Eve. The house smelled of turkey, cinnamon, and pine. Everyone was gathered around the long dining table, decorated with golden candles and sparkling ornaments. I had spent the morning helping with the food, making sure everything was ready. My heart was full because I thought we were going to enjoy the holiday together as a family. But what happened that night, it broke me. I was sitting at the table, listening to the chatter of my children, my daughter-in-law, and the grandchildren when suddenly, my daughter-in-law leaned across the table. Her smile was sharp, her voice louder than the Christmas carols playing in the background. "Your poor old face," she said, laughing as she picked up her wine glass. "It's becoming a shame to this family." Everyone went quiet. My heart stopped. I looked at my son, praying he would defend me, but instead he smirked and nodded. "Finally," he said, "someone said it." The words cut me deeper than any knife could. My hands shook. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to hold my dignity, tried not to let the tears show. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood up. My voice was steady, though inside I was breaking. "Then I'm leaving," I said. My daughter's fork clattered against her plate. Her face went pale. "Mom." And just as I turned toward the door, my son's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's my boss." He answered quickly. "Hello, sir. Merry Christmas." Then the voice on the other side boomed loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "Is that your mother I just saw on the cover of Forbes magazine?" The room froze. My son's face drained of color. My daughter-in-law's smirk disappeared. Everyone turned to me in stunned silence. And that was the moment. The moment their insults turned into gasps of disbelief. But how did it come to this? What secret had I been keeping that could put me on the cover of Forbes without my family even knowing? To understand that, I must take you back to the days when nobody believed in me, when I was left alone to struggle, and when I decided to change my life forever. It all began 25 years ago, when I was nothing but a broken woman with empty pockets, a hungry child, and a dream so fragile even I doubted it could survive. The room was silent. All eyes turned to me, their mouths hanging open like they had just seen a ghost. My son's hand shook as he held the phone to his ear, his boss's voice still echoing through the speaker. "Is that your mother on the cover of Forbes magazine?" The question hung in the air. No one moved. The room was heavy with silence. The words from my son's boss still echoed in everyone's minds. "Is that your mother on the cover of Forbes magazine?" My son stood frozen, the phone still pressed against his ear, his eyes darting between me and the others. My daughter-in-law's smirk had long disappeared. Her face now twisted with confusion and a touch of fear. My daughter sat pale, her hands trembling against her lap. I didn't say a word. Silence sometimes is the loudest answer. Finally, my son stammered into the phone. "Yes, sir, yes, that's my mother." His voice cracked. I wasn't aware." The boss chuckled on the other end, unaware of the storm in our living room. "Didn't know you came from such greatness, huh? Congratulations. I'll see you back at the office after the holidays." The line went dead. My son lowered the phone slowly, his face still blank. That was when my daughter-in-law snapped. This can't be true. "Forbes. You." She pointed at me, her words dripping with disbelief. "You've been hiding things. You're old, you sit quietly, you wear cheap clothes. How could you possibly?" Her voice grew sharper with every word, but she didn't finish her sentence. My son raised his hand and hissed at her. "Enough." For the first time that evening, he looked directly at me. "Mom, why didn't you tell us?" His voice was soft, almost broken. My daughter, on the other hand, had tears in her eyes. "Mom, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." She pushed her chair back and rushed to hug me, her arms tight around my shoulders. But I stayed still. My heart was torn in two. On one hand, I wanted to forgive them all, to tell them that I understood their ignorance. On the other hand, the scars from their words. "Your face is a shame." Finally someone said it. We're still fresh and bleeding. My daughter-in-law stood up suddenly. Well, if this is true, she said coldly, then maybe this family deserves to share in it. After all, you wouldn't have worked so hard if it wasn't for your children. Right? She looked at me with a glint in her eye that I recognized too well. Greed. Her words made my stomach turn. And just like that, the dinner table turned from a battlefield of insults to a battlefield of desires. My son cleared his throat nervously. Mom, I think what she means is, maybe we can be more involved in your business. Maybe you can show me how everything works. You know, keep it in the family. My daughter pulled away from me, shaking her head. No. Don't twist this, Mark. Don't you dare. Mom owes you nothing. None of us deserve anything after what was just said to her. The tension was rising. The children were now split, one side begging forgiveness, the other side scheming. I raised my hand. Enough. My voice was steady, but inside my heart thundered. You insult me in one breath and want my empire in the next? Respect isn't something you buy after you've thrown it away. The air grew colder. My daughter-in-law. The man in the black suit stepped into the warm glow of the Christmas lights, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor. The leather folder in his hand looked heavy, and his sharp eyes searched the room until they landed on me. Mrs. Margaret, he said firmly, I apologize for interrupting your evening, but this cannot wait. It's about your company. My son blinked, his jaw tightening. Her company? He turned to me with wide eyes. Mom, what is going on? I didn't answer. Not yet. My chest felt tight, my hands cold. Because I knew who this man was. His name was Mr. Harris, and he worked for one of the biggest investment groups in the country. His sudden presence here meant only one thing, trouble. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. What is it, Harris? I asked, keeping my voice calm though my heart pounded. The man glanced at the family awkwardly. Perhaps we should speak privately? But before I could respond, my daughter-in-law jumped in, her voice sharp. No. If this is about her company, then we deserve to hear it too. We're family. Her words dripped with false sweetness. I could see the hunger in her eyes. She was already thinking about money, power, inheritance. I clenched my jaw. Fine, I said. Speak. Harris opened the leather folder and pulled out a stack of documents. He laid them on the table, right beside the untouched turkey. The sight of cold, black and white papers lying among red candles and golden ornaments felt unreal. There's been a breach, he said flatly. Sensitive information about your business dealings has been leaked. Someone is trying to undermine you, Margaret. And from the evidence we've collected, he hesitated, his eyes scanning my children before lowering his voice. It appears the leak came from inside your own family. The room erupted. What? My son shouted, his chair scraping back. That's ridiculous, my daughter cried, her hands shaking. My daughter-in-law's face went pale, then quickly turned red. How dare you accuse us? But Harris didn't flinch. He tapped the papers. We traced the leak to an email account connected to this address. Unless someone here confesses, the investigation will continue. And trust me, the consequences will be severe. My head spun. My family, my own blood betraying me? My stomach churned. I looked around the table. My son avoided my gaze, fiddling nervously with his napkin. My daughter stared at me with wide, honest eyes, her lips trembling. My daughter-in-law. Her arms were crossed, her chin raised in defiance. Something inside me twisted. I had sacrificed everything for these people. Sleepless nights. Empty stomachs. Years of labor. And now one of them had stabbed me in the back. I steadied my voice. Which one of you did this? No one spoke. The silence was heavier than any insult they had ever thrown at me. Finally, Harris cleared his throat. Mrs. Margaret, we'll need your decision quickly. Do you want us to pursue legal? The house went black. The warm glow of Christmas candles vanished. The twinkling lights of the tree snuffed out in an instant. All that was left was the sound of quickened breaths, the rustle of chairs, and the distant whimper of my youngest grandchild in the living room. And then footsteps. Heavy, slow, purposeful. They echoed through the silence, growing louder, closer. My daughter clutched my arm tightly. Mom, what's happening? Her voice cracked with fear. Harris, the man in the black suit, pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, flicking it on. The narrow beam cut through the darkness, landing on the hallway. But the footsteps had already stopped. "Who's there?" Harris demanded, his voice firm. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your heart pound louder than any sound. My son moved quickly, fumbling for his phone. "I'll call the police." Before he could dial, the lights flickered back on. Brightness flooded the room, almost blinding after the suffocating dark. And standing in the doorway of the dining room was a figure none of us expected. It was my ex-husband. The man who had abandoned me decades ago. Who had walked out when life was hardest. His face was older, harder, but those cold, familiar eyes sent a chill down my spine. "Hello, Margaret," he said with a smirk. "Merry Christmas." My daughter gasped. My son froze, his phone slipping from his hand. My daughter-in-law's jaw dropped in shock. I stood still, my stomach twisting. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low and sharp. He chuckled, stepping further inside as if he owned the place. "I heard about your little success story. Forbes cover girl, HM? Quite an achievement for the woman everyone thought was finished." He glanced around the table, his eyes glinting. "I came to collect what's mine." Harris stepped forward, blocking his path. "Sir, you're trespassing. This is not your home." But my ex-husband ignored him, his eyes locked on me. "You think you built all of this alone, Margaret? You think you can erase me from the story? I gave you that kitchen. I put food on the table in the early days. Without me, you'd have been nothing." His words hit me like knives, but I didn't flinch. I had heard enough lies from this man to last a lifetime. "You left us to starve." I spat, my voice steady though my hands trembled. "You left me to raise our children alone. You don't get to show up decades later and claim anything." My daughter burst into tears. My son looked torn, confusion etched across his face. My daughter-in-law, however, leaned forward eagerly, her eyes sparkling. "Wait, if he's their father, doesn't that mean he has a right to?" "Stop," my daughter shouted, slamming her fist on the table. "You don't get to twist this. He abandoned us." But my ex-husband only smiled, pulling a crumpled paper from his coat pocket. "Actually, I do have rights. This is a contract, one Margaret signed years ago. And according to this, a portion of her business." Gasps filled the room. Harris's face hardened. He snatched the paper and scanned it quickly, his brow furrowing. This could be serious," he muttered. "Depending on the court, he may have a claim." My knees weakened. My mind spun. How could this be? Had I really signed something years ago in my desperation that could come back to haunt me now? My ex-husband leaned closer, his smile cruel. "So, Margaret, are you going to hand it over peacefully? Or shall I drag you through court, strip by strip, until there's nothing left?" The room spun with shock, fear, and anger. My son and daughter argued loudly, my daughter-in-law whispered greedily into my son's ear. Harris flipped through the documents, and I stood frozen, staring into the face of the man who had once destroyed me, now threatening to do it all over again. But before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. Not light, not polite. A pounding. Hard. Repeated. Bam, bam, bam. Everyone went silent. Harris's head shot up, his face suddenly pale. "Margaret," he whispered. "I think I know who that is. And if I'm right, this just became much more dangerous than we imagined." The pounding grew louder. Bam, bam, bam. Each strike against the door echoed through the house, rattling the Christmas ornaments and shaking the very air around us. My grandchildren whimpered from the living room, and my daughter hurried to comfort them, her hands trembling. Harris's face was grim, his voice low but urgent. "Margaret, do not open that door." My son frowned, confusion written all over his face. Why? Who could it be? The pounding came again, faster this time. Bam, bam, bam. And then a deep voice thundered from the other side. "Open up. Federal agents." Gasps filled the room. My daughter-in-law covered her mouth with her hand. My son staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief. Federal? As if enjoying the chaos he had brought with him. And deep down, I knew. This wasn't random. Someone in this room had pushed things to this level. Someone wanted to see me fall. Harris leaned close, whispering urgently, "Margaret, you have two choices. Open the door and face them, or let me stall them while you escape through the back. But decide now." My pulse hammered in my ears. Escape? At my age, running would only make me look guilty. But opening that door might destroy everything I had built. The pounding came again, shaking the house. "Bm bm bm." And then a voice sharper than before. "This is your final warning." My daughter sobbed. My son whispered something under his breath. My ex-husband smirked. My daughter-in-law leaned forward, her voice low but venomous. "Open the door, Margaret. Let's see how strong you really are without your magazine covers." Her words sliced through me like a blade. I took a step forward, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. Everyone held their breath. The agents outside were seconds away from breaking it down themselves. I touched the knob, and suddenly Harris grabbed my wrist. His face was pale, his eyes wide. "Margaret," he whispered urgently, "don't open it. I just realized who set this up. And if I'm right, it's someone sitting at this very table." The room turned to ice. Harris's grip on my wrist was firm, his voice low but full of fire. "It's one of them. Someone in this room betrayed you." My knees weakened. I glanced at each face, searching for the cracks in their expressions. My son, pale and trembling, avoided my eyes. My daughter-in-law smirked ever so slightly, like she was enjoying the tension. My daughter, clutching her children, looked terrified. And my ex-husband, his grin had widened, as though he were watching a play he had written himself. The pounding on the door grew louder. "Open up. This is your last chance." The kids started crying, their tiny voices breaking through the chaos. My daughter tried to hush them, but her tears betrayed her own fear. Harris stepped into the center of the room. "Listen to me. If we let them in now, Margaret will be dragged away in handcuffs. Do you want that? On Christmas?" "No one wants that," my daughter cried. But my daughter-in-law laughed coldly. "Don't be so sure. Some of us are tired of living in her shadow." Everyone turned toward her. My chest tightened. "Emily, what are you saying?" She shrugged, her eyes cold and sharp. "I'm saying you've made yourself a target. You prance around on magazine covers, you play the saint, but deep down you're just an old woman who doesn't know when to step aside. Powerful people don't like competition. And when you flaunt your success, you make enemies. Maybe you even make enemies right here at home." My son grabbed her arm. "Emily, stop." But his voice lacked strength, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Something inside me broke. Could it be my own son? Something inside me broke. Could it be my own son? Harris turned sharply, pointing straight at him. "It's you, isn't it? You leaked her information. You had access to her accounts. You fed the lies to the right people." The color drained from my son's face. I didn't," he stammered, his lips trembling. "I would never betray my mother." But Harris's eyes narrowed. "Then why did the documents used against her come from your email?" The words fell like a bomb. Gasps filled the room. My daughter's knees buckled, and she clung to the chair for balance. My ex-husband let out a low chuckle, almost gleeful. I stepped forward, my voice barely a whisper. "Michael, is this true?" He shook his head violently. "No, Mom. I swear, I don't know how they got in. Someone must have hacked me." But even as he spoke, his wife's hand slipped from his arm, and her expression told me everything. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't even surprised. She knew. The pounding on the door came again, harder this time. "Federal agents. Step away from the door." Harris's voice grew urgent. "We're out of time. Margaret, if your son's betrayal is real, they'll tear this house apart. If it's not, then someone else in this room is framing him. Either way, we need proof. Right now." I looked into my son's pleading eyes. My heart screamed to believe him, but my mind whispered the truth I didn't want to face. Suddenly, my ex-husband's voice cut through the chaos. "Why are you all pretending to be shocked? She brought this on herself. Margaret's been hiding secrets for years. Maybe it's time the world finally saw who she really is." My head snapped toward him, rage rising in my chest. "What secrets are you talking about?" He smiled slowly, that cruel smile I had always hated. Why don't you ask yourself who you stepped on to get to Forbes? Everyone froze. And in that moment, the agents outside began breaking the door down. Crash. The wood splintered. The children screamed. Harris lunged to shield me. My family scattered in panic. And just as the door burst open, my son shouted something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't me, it was Dad. The front door shattered with a deafening crack. Splinters flew across the floor as armed agents in dark uniforms swarmed into the house, their boots pounding like thunder. Federal agents. Nobody move. One of them barked. The children screamed in terror. My daughter clutched them tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. My daughter-in-law raised her hands, her eyes darting nervously from one agent to another. My son looked frozen, his lips trembling as if his words had just betrayed him, and then my ex-husband stepped forward. He didn't flinch. He didn't cower. He smirked, sliding his hands casually into the air. Well, looks like Christmas just got interesting. On the ground, an agent shouted. Everyone dropped to their knees except him. He stood tall, his eyes fixed on me with a wicked grin. It wasn't me, it was Dad, my son shouted again, his voice cracking under the weight of his fear. The room froze. Even the agents paused for a moment, turning their sharp gazes toward my ex-husband. My chest tightened. Michael, what are you saying? Tears welled in my son's eyes. I saw him, Mom. Weeks ago. He had your files. He was in your office. He said you didn't deserve everything you had built, that it should have been his. He threatened me if I told anyone. The agent's attention snapped to my ex-husband. One of them pulled out a folder, flipping it open. We have evidence that points to you, sir. Care to explain how confidential documents linked to financial fraud ended up under your name? For the first time, the smirk slipped from his face. His eyes narrowed. This is a setup, he hissed. Margaret's playing games, trying to turn my family against me. I shook my head violently. No. You came here tonight to mock me, to enjoy my humiliation. And now we know why. You wanted to destroy me. The agents moved closer, two of them grabbing his arms. He struggled, shouting, You fools. She's the one hiding something. She's not the angel you think she is. They forced him to the ground, handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists. My grandchildren screamed louder, their little eyes wide with terror. My daughter collapsed against the wall, sobbing. My son buried his face in his hands, guilt washing over him. My daughter-in-law muttered under her breath, her face unreadable. And me? I stood there, my heart torn to pieces. Because as the agents dragged him toward the door, my ex-husband twisted his head back, his eyes burning into mine. This isn't over, Margaret. You think I'm the villain? Just wait until they open the files. Then the world will know what kind of woman you really are. The words cut through me like a knife. The agents shoved him outside, their radios crackling. Harris rushed to my side, whispering urgently, Don't panic. He's bluffing. He has nothing. But deep inside, a terrible memory rose to the surface. A secret I had buried years ago. Something I thought would never come to light. And as the front door slammed behind the agents, leaving silence in their wake, I realized with a shiver. Maybe he wasn't bluffing. The front door slammed shut, leaving the house in stunned silence. My ex-husband's last words still echoed in the air like poison. The world will know what kind of woman you really are. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, my chest heavy with memories I had spent decades locking away. My daughter-in-law broke the silence first. Well, she muttered, arms crossed, he's gone. But he wasn't wrong, was he? Everyone turned toward her. What are you talking about? My daughter snapped, her voice trembling. Emily tilted her chin toward me. She's hiding something. He wouldn't have said that unless he knew. Maybe she's not the saint she pretends to be. But I didn't walk away clean. To protect myself, and to protect you, I took steps. I signed documents under another name. I created a shield around our family, one that wasn't entirely legal. I told myself it was justified, but my voice cracked. It was still a lie I've carried for decades. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at my children. That's the truth your father was hinting at. And now someone else has dug it up. They want to use it to destroy me. My daughter-in-law smirked. So the great Margaret isn't so perfect after all. Shut up, Emily, my son snapped, his voice shaking with rage. He turned back to me, tears running down his cheeks. Mom, you did that for us? I nodded weakly. I did it so you wouldn't grow up in fear. So you could have a chance at life without that man's shadow over you. But in protecting you, I became something I swore I'd never be. Silence fell. And then Harris stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady. Margaret, what you did wasn't clean. But it was brave. You chose your family over yourself. And that's not a crime, it's sacrifice. My daughter burst into tears, running into my arms. My son followed, clinging to me like a child again. Even the grandchildren crept closer, their little hands tugging at my dress as if to say they still loved me. But Emily stood apart, her eyes cold. You're all fools. The world won't forgive her like you have. When that secret goes public, she'll be finished. Harris turned to her, his gaze sharp. Maybe. Or maybe the world will see her for what she really is, a fighter. A woman who refused to be broken. That's what Forbes saw. And that's what her enemies fear. The note still lay on the table, its threat looming over us. 3 days. But as I looked around the room, at my children holding me, at Harris standing guard, at the strength I still felt burning inside, I realized something. I wasn't going to wait 3 days. I would confess myself. On my terms. To the whole world. Because no matter what anyone said, my face, this old wrinkled face, was not a shame to this family. It was the face of a survivor. And if they wanted a fight, I was ready to give them one. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, my wrinkled hands resting against the edge of the sink. My reflection stared back, aged, tired, but stronger than I had felt in years. I thought about my daughter-in-law's cruel words. Your poor old face is a shame to this family. I touched my cheeks, the lines etched deep with years of sacrifice and struggle. Shame? No. This face told a story the world was about to hear in my own voice. By sunrise, I had already called Harris. Together, we drafted a statement. By noon, I sat in front of cameras, lights blinding me, reporters waiting with hungry eyes. My children sat behind me, nervous but supportive. I cleared my throat and began. For years, I have carried a secret. I am not ashamed to say it now. I once made a choice that wasn't perfect, but it was necessary. I chose to protect my children when powerful men tried to destroy me. I bent rules, yes. I hid behind names, yes. But I did it so my family could have a future. That is the truth, and I will not hide it anymore. The words echoed across the room. Flashes burst as cameras captured every angle of my old face, every crack in my voice, every ounce of my truth. When I finished, there was silence. Then a single clap. It came from Harris. He stood tall, his eyes proud. Slowly, others joined. Some clapped reluctantly, others sincerely. The sound filled the hall, not of mockery, but of respect. But not everyone was pleased. That evening, as the news broadcasted my confession, Emily sat stone-faced in the corner, scrolling furiously through her phone. You think this changes anything? She spat. You think the world will forgive you? No, Margaret. They'll dig deeper. They'll find more. And when they do, you'll wish you had stayed silent. My son snapped at her, but her words stuck with me. Because just as the screen behind us switched to a live feed, the anchor's voice froze my blood. Breaking news. New evidence has surfaced suggesting that Margaret's confession today is only part of the story. Sources claim there's another hidden scandal, one even her family doesn't know about. My daughter gasped. Mom, what are they talking about? The anchor continued, his voice sharp and clear. According to leaked files, Margaret may not have acted alone. A partner, hidden in the shadows, helped her build her empire. And tonight, we may finally learn their identity. The camera cut to a blurry image. A man's silhouette. And though the picture was grainy, my stomach twisted into knots. Because I recognized him. And if the world discovered who he really was, everything would collapse. The grainy image lingered on the TV screen like a ghost from another life. A man's silhouette, blurry, faceless, yet terrifyingly familiar. My knees buckled, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. My daughter whispered, "Mom, do you know who that is?" I didn't answer. My lips parted, but no words came. The truth was clawing at my throat, but saying it aloud would tear my family apart. Emily's eyes narrowed, sharp and cruel. "Oh, she knows. Look at her face. She knows exactly who he is." "Shut up, Emily," Michael barked, but even he turned toward me, his eyes desperate. "Mom, please tell us. Who was he?" The news anchor's voice filled the silence. "Our sources say this mysterious partner was the true mastermind behind certain deals in Margaret's empire. His name has not yet been confirmed, but insiders claim his identity will be revealed within the next 48 hours. The screen cut back to the newsroom, but the damage was already done. My daughter's voice shook. "Mom, did you really have a partner? All these years? You told us you built it on your own." I swallowed hard, my chest heavy. I did. Most of it was mine. But in the beginning, I wasn't alone. Michael's eyes widened. Then who was he? Before I could answer, a sharp knock rattled the door. Not pounding like before, but 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Harris moved instantly, hand on his holster, signaling for everyone to stay back. He opened the door a crack and froze. On the porch stood a man in a long coat, his hat pulled low to shadow his face. He stepped forward, and in the dim porch light, I saw him clearly for the first time in decades. The secret partner. My breath caught in my throat. He removed his hat slowly, revealing silver hair and piercing blue eyes I thought I'd never see again. "Hello, Margaret," he said softly. "It's been a long time." The room fell into stunned silence. My daughter whispered, "Mom, who is he?" But I couldn't answer. My past had just walked through the door, and if the world discovered who he really was, everything I'd confessed would look like nothing compared to the storm that was about to break. The man stepped inside as if he still belonged here, his shoes clicking softly against the hardwood floor. He carried himself with calm authority, the kind that demanded attention without a word. My children stared at him wide-eyed. Emily, however, smiled faintly, like a predator catching the scent of blood. Harris moved to block him. "State your business." The man chuckled. "Relax, Harris. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came to see Margaret. She and I have unfinished business." His eyes locked on mine and my stomach twisted. I hadn't seen those eyes in over 30 years, but they hadn't lost their sharpness. "James," I whispered. Gasps filled the room. Michael's voice cracked. You know him?" I nodded slowly, unable to hide the truth any longer. "This is James Carter. He was my partner when I first built my company." James gave a polite bow, his lips curling into a sly smile. "Not just a partner, Margaret. The partner. The one who made sure you had the connections to get off the ground. Without me, you'd still be selling ideas out of your garage." My daughter's face twisted with confusion. "Mom, you told us you did it all yourself." I winced. I did most of it myself. But James opened doors I couldn't open. Emily leaned forward, her voice sharp. "And what did you give him in return?" The question hung heavy in the air. James smirked. "Ah, the daughter-in-law, always the sharpest tongue. What she means to ask, Margaret, is how much of your empire was bought with my silence." Harris's hand tightened on his holster. "Say what you came to say, Carter." James's expression hardened. "Fine. Margaret, the truth is already leaking. The files are out there. You can spin your confession all you want, but when the world learns I was behind half your deals, they won't see you as a fighter. They'll see you as a fraud." "No," I snapped, my voice shaking but fierce. "You didn't build my empire. You only gave me shortcuts, and every time, I paid a price." Michael stepped forward, desperate. "What price, Mom? What did he make you do?" Tears burned my eyes. Things I never wanted to. Things I swore I'd never tell you about. James's smirk widened. "And yet here we are. The truth on the edge of spilling out. And when it does, Margaret, I won't be the one destroyed. You will." The tension was unbearable. My children looked at me, pleading for answers. Harris stood ready, his jaw tight. And Emily. Her smile told me she was savoring every second of my unraveling. Then James leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. Unless, of course, you're ready to pay me again. The silence in the room was so heavy. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. James's whisper still burned in my ear like hot iron. Michael was the first to break. Mom, what did he mean? Pay him again? Did you pay him before? Emily's eyes glittered with cruel delight. Oh, this is better than I imagined. The great Margaret, Forbes cover star, the inspiration of thousands, was she just a fraud buying her way through life? Enough! Harris barked, his voice thundering. Carter, speak plain or get out before I drag you out. James didn't flinch. Instead, he took his time, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out a thin envelope. He laid it on the table like a gambler showing his hand. These, he said smoothly, are copies of contracts. Documents proving Margaret used my shell companies to move money and win bids. Without me, she wouldn't have landed half her earliest deals. Michael's face went pale. Sarah gasped. Emily laughed under her breath. I shook my head fiercely. That's not true. I earned those deals. Yes, James helped me, at a time when no one else believed in me, but I built everything with my own 2 hands. James leaned back, smug. And yet, Margaret, your children never knew about me. Your employees never knew about me. And the world certainly never knew. Why? Because you were too ashamed to admit the truth. Tears pricked my eyes. Because you used me, James. You gave me connections, yes, but every deal came with strings. Every contract bound me tighter to your control. And when I tried to walk away, you threatened me. That's not partnership, that's blackmail. Gasps rippled around the table. Harris's hand twitched near his gun. Emily clapped her hands slowly, mockingly. Oh, this is delicious. Tell us, mother-in-law. How much of your so-called empire is really just stolen credit? How much did you pretend to be the fighter, when really you were just a puppet? Michael's voice cracked with hurt. Mom, is she right? Did you lie to us all these years? My heart broke seeing the doubt in his eyes. No, son. I fought harder than anyone. But I also made mistakes. Mistakes I wanted to bury, so you'd never see me as weak. James chuckled darkly. And now here we are. I'm not asking for much, Margaret. Just enough money to retire comfortably. Pay me, and I'll keep your secrets safe. Refuse, and I'll make sure the world knows. The room spun. All eyes were on me, my children, torn between love and betrayal. Emily, waiting for me to crumble. James, enjoying every drop of power. And then, before I could answer, Harris slammed his fist on the table so hard the glasses rattled. No more games, he growled. Carter, you've made your threat. But here's the truth. If you so much as try to blackmail her, I'll make sure you don't get a second chance. Now, Margaret, he turned to me, his voice gentler but still fierce. It's time to decide. Do you keep running from your past? Or do you finally tell your family everything? The weight of his words crushed me. My chest tightened. I opened my mouth, the truth clawing its way up my throat. And then James pulled something from his coat pocket. Not another document. Not an envelope. A recorder. And with a single press of his thumb, my voice filled the room. A voice from 30 years ago. My own younger, desperate voice. Please, James. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't let them find out. The room went silent as my younger voice echoed through the speakers. Please, James. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't let them find out. Michael staggered back as if he'd been struck. Sarah covered her mouth in horror. Even Harris, strong and steady, looked shaken. Emily leaned forward with a wicked grin. There it is. Proof. The saintly Margaret begging for favors, selling her pride. You've lied to everyone, including your own children. James clicked the recorder off and slipped it back into his coat. You see? I own her. I always have. And unless she pays me what I want, I'll make sure every major outlet in the country hears this tape. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from the storm building inside me. My legs felt weak, but my spirit had never been stronger. You're right, James, I said, my voice breaking but loud enough to fill the room. That was me. That was my voice. I was young. I was desperate. and I was afraid no one would ever take me seriously as a woman in business. So I made a deal with the devil. Gasps rippled through the family. I kept going. But you don't owe me anymore. That woman in the recording, she's gone. The Margaret you're trying to blackmail is the one who stood on her own 2 feet, rebuilt after every betrayal, and refused to give up. Yes, you opened doors. But I'm the one who walked through them, fought every battle inside, and built something you could only dream of. James smirked, ready to argue, but Harris stepped between us. You've had your moment, Carter. Now it's over. Michael's eyes brimmed with tears. Mom, why didn't you tell us? Because, I whispered. I didn't want you to see me as weak. But I see now, hiding the truth only gave men like him power over me. And I won't let that happen again. Emily tried one last jab. You expect us to just forgive you? To believe you're still the hero you claim to be? Before I could respond, Sarah spoke up for the first time. Her voice was soft but firm. She is the hero. Not because she was perfect, but because she fought through her shame, her fear, and still built a legacy. We should be proud. Michael nodded slowly, tears streaming down his cheeks. I am proud, Mom. I believe you. Emily's smirk faltered. She looked around the table and realized she was alone. James's face hardened. Fine. Believe what you want. But the world won't be so forgiving. At that exact moment, my daughter's phone buzzed. She answered quickly. Her eyes widened. It's my boss. He says Forbes just released the issue. Mom, she turned the screen so everyone could see. You're on the cover. There it was. My face wrinkled, aged, unapologetic. The headline read, The Woman Who Refused to Stay Silent, Margaret's Untold Story. Tears spilled down my cheeks. The world knew. The truth was out. And instead of shame, I felt free. James cursed under his breath and stormed toward the door, but Harris blocked his way. You'll answer for your threats. Blackmail doesn't walk away. The rest of the family surrounded me, hugging me tightly. For the first time in decades, I felt whole. I turned toward Emily, who lingered in the corner with bitterness still etched on her face. I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. One day you'll understand, dear. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up. She said nothing, but her eyes flickered with something, anger maybe, but also respect. As James was escorted out, I stood taller than I had in years. My past was no longer a chain. My trette was my freedom. And with that, my story was complete. Viewers, my name is Margaret, and I thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so you never miss another one. Tell me in the comments which part of the country you're watching from. I love knowing where my family of listeners is gathered from.